are here to talk about Trilogue Table Editor. I'm Gianluigi Alari. I'm from the European Parliament, and I'm project manager for the European Parliament of this project, which is a joint project with the Council.
Yeah, thank you, Gigi. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Myself, Előd, Dudás, and I'm from the Council Services Digital Solutions Directorate. And I'm Gigi's counterpart, and it's a great opportunity to be here today and share some thoughts with you about our joint endeavor that we do trust will benefit and facilitate the life of everyone who has ever been dealt with these so-called Trilogue Tables, of which you're going to hear about in just 30 seconds from now. Yes, and now we have the good presentation on the screen, so maybe let's get started. So this morning already you have heard a presentation about EDIT, which is also a collaborative project with the European Commission and the Council Services. And there, Sandro also mentioned the OLP, so the Ordinary Legislative Procedure, that is being introduced by the Treaty of Lisbon, bringing the European Parliament on the same footing with that of the Council of the EU when it comes to creating legislation. And in the framework of the OLP, there's a part which is called Trilogue Discussions, which are aimed that the co-legislators strike a deal over a legislative proposal coming from the European Commission. These discussions have two types. One is the technical and informal discussions, where more drafting sessions taking place. And also there's another one which is called political trilogues, where in many cases high-level participants are taking place, or are participating, such as director generals or ministers or even commissioners from the European Commission, as apart from the two co-legislators facing each other and discussing, the European Commission is also present in the room as facilitating the discussions. While if everything goes well during these discussions, then parties can agree on a proposal, which then can be voted in the EP plenary and also adopted by the Council of the EU, that later on can be then sent to the Publications Office to publication, so it becomes European law.
As you can see from the title of the presentation, we are here to discuss about a product which is an editor, and why another editor. In fact, we have already MS Word. MS Word does support currently trilogue discussion, but you know how these discussions, these trilogues can be supported by using MS Word. And we would like to show you a little snippet and a little video of one Word document, that example of Word document that is used during this trilogue. So it's huge tables. In fact, it's a Word document that consists of huge tables. There are tables numbers, there are markup, differences between the Commission proposals, the European Parliament position, Council position are marked as usual with the bold italics markings. We have metadata in it. We have footnotes that are in general at the end of the page, because Word uses footnotes at the end of the page and not at the cell level. So, and they are really huge documents. I mean, the example was 200 pages, but we have bigger ones. And MS Word does not handle well large tables. It's not done for that. Furthermore, it doesn't offer dynamic views of the content, and also, in fact, has very limited filtering capabilities on the table itself. It's not an Excel on text, but it's a word processor. Okay, and of course, doesn't also offer support of versioning inside the tool, not at the single structure level, nor at the document level. And that means that the tool is not suited for these kind of meetings, of negotiations, and so we needed to come up with a new tool to support these meetings and these trilogues.
Yes, definitely, Gigi, and in fact that's the reason why we do not necessarily see the bright new future with this tool to continue. And that is why, with the support of our Secretary General in 2016, we have started collaborating together on a common endeavor to agree on a common goal, which is basically to facilitate the life of everyone who has ever dealt with digital dimension with these Trilogue tables. So the management and the creation of these tables should be much more easy to carry on.
Yeah, the project at the governance level is joint with the council, so we have a joint steering committee, and the commission is also participating to the steering committee as an observer. In fact, it's more or less the same picture of the real trilogues, where council and parliament are the main actors, but commission is there to facilitate the trilogues. And the product itself is hosted by the European Parliament and is based on a distributed content repository for confidentiality reasons. Of course, comments and markups and other information of each institution must stay in the institution. So we have a distributed content repository. And regarding the Parliament, this product is part of the e-Parliament program. There is a stand down for the program itself that consists of many other initiatives.
So what the bright future should look like? In fact, I think we have to admit that we were not as brave as Tassos was in the morning, showing a live demo on the presidency portal. So we have prepared you some video clips on how the editor looked like, and out of which we would take out 3 or 4 very important features of the tool that we're developing. And the first one would be the text analysis. So let me just click on that, and a little bit, because of lack of time, fast forward it. So what you see on the screen, if I just stop for a second, is that we try to imitate the lookalike of how the MS Word tables at this stage stand. So you have the 4 columns, because I think maybe we should also mention this. You have the positions and the positions of the institutions, and then the agreement in the 4th column. And what now you see on the screen is one of the powerful features that we have built in already, which is basically help to follow the advancement of the discussions during the trial negotiations. And this, what is now being shown on the screen, is what is called the negotiation marker, where we foresee 3 markers. Green is agreed, though we know nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. Yellow is in discussions, and then the red would be that it's something blocking or too technical. And as you can see now, the user on the screen is marking up basically the parts of the text, what has been agreed, and what has been now in discussions. Apart from this grouping facility, we have a second one, which we find it interesting, and that is the thematical grouping of the content itself, meaning that we can put little post-its to the certain parts of the text, defining that those text parts, which topic they're relating to. So in this case, for example, we are saying that, I can't read it anymore, there's a reference to the work-life balance expression itself. And why this can be useful, because then you'll see it on the next screen, but I wouldn't wish to go ahead of this. That also helps in negotiating to better focus on certain aspects or certain topics of the text itself when they are discussing over the proposals being put forward by the European Commission. And the last facility that I would like to show you here is the commenting facility. That also could be very useful when it comes to analyzing the text itself. And as you can see here, for example, then there's a mention now putting in saying that this has been agreed at one of the technical meetings. So when it comes to further putting the text forward for the adoption or for a final agreement, that can be an important and relevant information for the users themselves. And with that being said, I think we can go to the next video. Oops, or next video clip. I pressed twice.
No, yeah. So once we analyze the text, and the text can be analyzed by adding this information, and also, of course, by deducing the information from the diffing that you see. It's automatic between the different texts. We can then filter. And that's where the power of the application mainly is from, because it helps focusing on thematic issues or on particular markers or on text differences. One thing that, for example, our users find particularly useful is just to show where there is no difference at all between the council and the EP positions, so that they can already mark it as fine. We don't need to negotiate anything. The text is the same. And this can be done in a snap with the tool, because in fact each one of these cells is not anymore a simple text, but we can compute on this text and compare this with the other content, and that's particularly, in fact, that's where we help the user focus on what they need to do. In fact, we negotiate on the content and to find an agreement on particular issues and particular parts of the text where we have differences and we need to discuss.
Maybe just to complement that, so why this is also super or important or powerful is that once these negotiation markers are established, so it could be even one by one or could be done in blocks, then the negotiating parties can say, for example, that let's focus today only on those elements that beforehand we marked them as red. So they were blocking issues. So that today we do not need to then go through all the text all the time. We can only focus on those elements that are blocking, so that they can go on with the discussions only focusing those elements. Now the next one would be then what we call the history rewind. That's a fact that sometimes positions are put forward. They do not necessarily fly every single time. And then the previous version needs to be replaced in the given cell. Now today how it is done copy and paste from a different version of the same table, which can be not just that it's labor intensive, but very much difficult sometimes to manage the versioning. Here what you see on the screen is that the history of the cell is kept. So with a click of a button, as you could see, the history can be rewinded to any of the versions that is being judged necessary by the negotiating parties.
And the fourth functionality we want to show you is the versioning. Of course, it's important to keep the history of every one of these text snippets, but we need to mark up at a certain point in the negotiations where we stand in the whole document. So we can create versions of the whole document. And that's pretty important. Later on, we'll see these versions mark certain milestones. For example, this is the version that we will discuss at that meeting, or this is the version that we exchanged, for example, at a certain point. And more importantly, we can compare version of documents and identify each and every cell that's of text that's changed. And that's, of course, something that is very, very important, because in huge documents of hundreds of pages, being able from one version to another to identify and spot only the parts of the text that has been changed, it's a feature that was not, of course, available before. Now, again, there are many other features. We can export in Word, we can export in PDF. We can, for example, that's another functionality that's appreciated, is we can, at a certain point, consolidate the content that we have in one of the columns. For example, let's say the agreement column. We say, okay, let's show if today we would produce a text, a new text based on this, how this would be reflected in a whole document. So in fact, we apply all the changes on the commission proposal, and we show the new text as it would come out from the negotiations.
So all this is very nice, but where are we now? Well, we're very happy to tell you that we're, since September, piloting our product, our tool. There are 2 negotiating teams that are using 1 year discussing over the Commission's proposal. They are marking up that something has agreed. They even put post-its and do later on the filtering. So I just mentioned we have 2 dossiers already in the pilot, and now we're looking at the 3rd one to include into this. And so far the feedback from the users, not to mention that of course that from day 1 we were talking to the users continuously, but since the pilot has started, the feedback is very, very positive, and we are encouraged to go further with the development towards the end of 2019.
And what we want also to stress, it's been and it is a project that is real collaboration. We are at a peer at the governance level, and we are a very alive and big team behind all of this. And well, that's at the last steering committee when we finally had a drink to and a party for the going to pilot. You would see some of the faces around this room, and that's the team behind, or at least part of the team.
Well, we call it family because you see the steering committee members on the photo. You see also the project management team members dealing with the daily operational aspects of the project, and you also see the developers, members of the developers team as well. So we are come together basically on this photo to show you that these are the good men and women who are working in the background or on the surface to make this all happen.